Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. It's Wednesday, August 8th. Special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. The Jamaica Civil Service Association, JCSA, says it's closely watching the inflation rate to see whether it needs to renegotiate the current wage agreement with the government. President of the association, O'Neill Grant, says he has noted talks of a revaluation of the index to reflect higher levels of inflation by increasing prices. He says the JCSA is paying keen attention to ensure workers are protected.
We are watching with great interest because if inflation goes beyond a particular target, it does trigger an adjustment in the wages of the workers. So we are going to be watching extremely carefully over the next few months to see what is going to be happening, because we have to ensure that our workers are protected. The little increase that we negotiated the other day was on the basis of inflation being low. If inflation goes beyond a particular percentage, it will trigger a renegotiation of the wage in the heads of agreement just concluded.
The JCSA is the latest union to speak about a possible renegotiation of the wage agreement after the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions suggested it was concerned about how the inflation rate is calculated. Mr. Grant says the JCSA is also concerned.
There are certain direct costs that public sector workers bear that are not captured in the survey of living conditions or in the statistics that indicate inflation. What we are seeing generally are increases in prices that are not reflected in the basket of goods. And we have now seen where the general indices that have been proving to be below the target set by the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Jamaica have been achieved.
Under the current wage agreement, unions can renegotiate if inflation exceeds the 4 to 6% range. The Registrar General's Department, RGD, says there is currently no mandatory registration and annual fee for marriage officers and has denied this is being collected. The issue has been in the spotlight for several weeks as some marriage officers have claimed that since this year, the RGD has requested and collected from them thousands of dollars in registration fees. Speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica program this morning, Chief Executive Officer of the RGD, Deidre English-Goss, says there has been a misunderstanding.
I have to, first of all, clarify that we do not charge any fees at the RGD. So, because there seems to be a misconception or misunderstanding that we've been charging fees at the RGD, and we do not charge any fees. In 2014, a fee was introduced and it was put on hold. It has not been revived since 2015, and we have not been collecting any fees for marriage officers.
So no one has had to pay $10,000 to do anything.
We have some training fees that we charge for training the marriage officers and retraining when marriage officers commit breaches of the legislation.
As debate rages in relation to access to Jamaica's beaches, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Darrell Vaz, has disclosed that a beach access and management policy is to be brought before Cabinet next month. He was speaking on RJR's Beyond the Headlines yesterday.
Once again, the issue of access to beaches by ordinary Jamaicans has come to the fore. The latest comes as residents in Discover Bay St. Anne are up in arms as they are now required to pay a fee to enter the once free Puerto Seco beach. Some have argued that all beaches should be freely accessible to Jamaicans, while others have countered saying the government is unable to manage free beaches and many are now run down and dirty. That's why the government says by next month, a beach access and management policy will be taken to Cabinet, which will address those issues.
That document, coincidentally, is on my desk after reviewing it and sending it back for some further consultations. We expect to table that, I would say, within the next Cabinet goes on a break, so I would say in September. And I think that will deal with quite a bit of the issues that have been raised over certainly the last few years.
Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Darrell Vaz, noted that the issue of beach access is a sensitive one, which requires balancing considerations for tourism and development without locking out Jamaicans. Mr. Vaz pointed out that there are still many free public beaches available for use by Jamaicans, but he said it's a challenge maintaining them.
There's a necessity to make sure that that is available to the public, but at the same time, when they leave there at a public beach without paying anything, how do you put that beach back into a condition that other people can enjoy it today or tomorrow? And that's where the whole thing comes in terms of how do you charge to be able to maintain the beach so that people can have a clean beach with the facilities.
In the meantime, the Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, says it's happy the beach access and the management policy is to be tabled after a 2-decade wait. Chief Executive Officer of JET, Susan Stanley, says the organization has provided feedback on the policy at least 3 times with no document forthcoming.
The first conversation around this policy started as far back as 1997. So we've been waiting 2 decades for this policy. Now I'm very glad to hear that it has gone to cabinet, because when we contacted the ministry recently to find out what the status was, we found that it had gone to cabinet and that we were not able to look at it, and that some of our comments may have been incorporated, we hope, but it's been a long time coming.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Newly elected president of the Jamaica Agricultural Society, JAS, Lenworth Fulton, says he's ready to redirect and revitalize the society. Speaking at the annual Denby Agricultural Show in Clarendon on Monday, Mr. Fulton noted that one of the top items on his agenda is to address the major concerns of farmers across the island. The agricultural sector has been facing challenges. However, the JAS president said a united effort from the society is needed to resolve those issues.
The new JS must work with government, private sector and other organizations to include the development of its key properties and businesses into sustainable operation as a major manifestation of the impending transformation. The new dispensation must focus on a pathway of recovery for those subsectors that are currently facing many challenges.
A St. Catherine fisherman suspected of being a mastermind in the drugs for guns trade has been sentenced. He's 34-year-old Gaffy Daly of Helshaw in Portmore, St. Catherine. He was sentenced yesterday in the St. Catherine Parish Court. The sentences are as follows: for the charge of possession of ganja, 3 months hard labor; for the charge of taking steps preparatory to export ganja, 6 months hard labor; for the charge of use of conveyance, 800,000 Jamaican dollars or 6 months hard labor. The sentences are to run concurrently if the fines are not paid. Daly was arrested about 9:30 p.m. on Sunday, June 3, in connection with the seizure of 490 pounds of ganja at the intersection of Lakespen and Municipal Boulevard in the parish. He was subsequently charged and pleaded guilty when he appeared in court on Tuesday, June 12. The Narcotics Police and the Financial Investigation Division are continuing the financial aspect of the investigation under the Proceeds of Crime Act. There are renewed calls this afternoon for Labour and Social Security Minister Shahini Robinson to have the disabilities law enacted. The call comes from opposition Senator Floyd Morris and Robert Blake, a member of the disabled community in St. James. The details in this report.
For years, and members of the disabled community are still waiting to know where they stand as it relates to legislation which will govern that community. It is a source of contention for these individuals as they have been facing a number of setbacks. Speaking with TVJ News at the Independence Day celebration in St. James, Robert Clark, a member of the Jamaica Disability Council, highlighted the concerns of the disabled community.
We would like for the Disability Act to fully come in effect, because that will give us more leverage, that will eliminate the barriers of discrimination, and it's going to be all about inclusion for persons with disability.
In the meantime, opposition Senator Floyd Morris says the government stands to lose out on funding to have the Code of Practices and Regulations done. The funding from the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, will end in the middle of August. But according to Senator Morris, that's just a small part of the issue.
More significant to that is that we are nowhere near the minister setting the effective date for the legislation to be brought into effect, because the legislation cannot be brought into effect unless the codes of practice and the regulations are prepared. And the regulation, not even the regulations have been drafted by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, because the members of the community of persons with disabilities have not seen any draft.
Senator Morris says although the hands of Minister Robinson are tied presently, there's another way in which the Act could come into effect with all the requisite pieces in place. He outlined that procedure while speaking with TVJ News this morning.
I would set the effective date and let all these players work with that time frame. So I would say 6 months down the road, this must happen, or there are going to be consequences. The gauntlet must be thrown down by the minister to make those who have to do their work and do it effectively.
But what will be Senator Morris's next course of action if the Disabilities Act is not enacted soon?
I have a course of action that I'm going to be taking as soon as the Senate resumes its sitting. But it cannot be that 4 years after the legislation has been brought to the Parliament and approved, that we are yet to see the legislation being effective, any aspect of the legislation being effective.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And time now for a look at what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In the next edition of the health report, we look at heat rash.
When the body gets hot, it produces the sweat. And so if the sweat cannot come out on the body to cause that evaporation, then that's where the problem comes in. Sweat stays in the skin, and when it stays there, it causes inflammation under the skin, and so you get the rash.
That's the health report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's healthy living tip. Here's how you can help protect yourself or your child from heat rash. Avoid overdressing. Wear soft, lightweight cotton clothing. When it's hot, stay in the shade or in an air-conditioned building, or use a fan to circulate the air. And keep your sleeping area cool and well ventilated.
And time now for sports. The 2018 Caribbean Premier League, his CPL debut. The Night Riders, though, have retained most of their 2017 winning squad and will once again be led by Dwayne Bravo. The match is set to bowl off at 7 p.m. Jamaica time. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashan Brown. Join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.